Yo, what is up guys, Bowie King here, and today we will be doing an update on who I would vote for to win on every season of Total Drama. And like in my old video, I will be doing it from a gameplay, but also character perspective. However, for the Redonkulous race, I will be doing it only from a character perspective, as there is no social strategy game to be played, so yeah, without further ado, let's just get to Island. Honestly, from a pure gameplay perspective, I don't know who played the better game. I mean, I do think Gwen was more strategically minded if you compare the two, but I do also think it's impressive how Owen doesn't get voted off even though he blows several challenges during the pre-merge. At the merge, I think Owen was in a better spot throughout the game, but I think that mostly has to do with the wonkiness that is the Island merge section, with rounds like the DJ and Lindsay round just being massive flukes in my opinion. I think what breaks the tie for me is that had the final two been what it was going to be, that being a jury vote, Owen beats Gwen, and I think honestly Owen beats nearly everyone by the time of the final 7 minus Lashana. And even then, I do think most people take Owen to the final 2, to where I think from a pure gameplay standpoint, Owen gets my vote. If we're talking from a character perspective, Gwen gets my vote, and it's kind of closer than before. Again, while I still agree that this is Gwen's best season here, and she has a lot of great moments and being a well-rounded character during the season, I can't deny how ridiculously funny Owen is throughout the season. But again, not enough for Owen to win in both categories, so yeah, as a character, Gwen gets my vote. Moving on to action, where we have Duncan versus Beth as the final two, and this final two kind of sucks. Again, on my recent rewatches, I really just sour on this final two. It's not bad, and I'm definitely being hyperbolic here, but I just think it's one of those finales where you can tell production wanted this to be the final two, instead of what actually would have made a better ending, but whatever. Again, from a gameplay point of view, I think they played relatively even games during the pre-merge, both being in decent enough spots on their team, but I do think had the DJ quit not have happened, I do think Duncan has an easier time in the game, while Beth would have lost Lindsay, and that's not great. However, once we get to the merge, I think it's clear my vote has to go to Beth for two big reasons. One, I don't really like claiming plot armor, as I think it's a cheap thing to do, but Duncan surviving rounds like the Lindsay and Lashana rounds are just blatant signs of production favoritism, and two, in a jury vote scenario, which it was, Duncan would have lost against probably anyone on the cast, to where again, I think he's massively benefited by the fact that Chris is only reading the first 3 votes. And I think had Chris read all the votes, Duncan would lose against Beth. He would lose against Owen. He would lose against Harold. He would lose against probably everyone except Courtney, and he actively votes out Courtney. So yeah, that's obviously terrible. So yeah, I do think Beth obviously would get my vote from a gameplay perspective, as I don't think Beth relied on plot armor heavily. However, from a character perspective, I do think Duncan gets my vote, I guess. Again, I just don't like Beth, and while I definitely think she is overhated as people claim her win was never set up, which just isn't true, the show does actually build her up pretty well in my opinion. I just think that some of the screen time she gets is kinda inaccurate. Again, while she does beat the flop allegations as she proves herself in challenges, and she does have a boyfriend, that's literally about it. Again, the show tries to portray her as a good friend when she's actively cheating on her boyfriend multiple times. She's annoying and also a semi-bad friend to Lindsay. So again, she's just not a great character in my opinion. Again, not saying Duncan is good in action, as I've said multiple videos in the past. I think Duncan as an individual character on the season is just such a prick and not an enjoyable character. However, when he's with anyone else, including Courtney, who was kind of annoying during the season, he's just so much better, providing a lot of funny moments and just being a likable character at points, which is more than I can say for Beth. So yeah, Duncan gets my vote as a character. Moving on to World Tour with Alejandro and Heather, and honestly, I just think my answer is quite literally copy and paste. Gameplay wise, Alejandro ran the season, and while I do question his reasoning to get out Tyler, as at least invulnerable in the next round if they lose, and he technically does get voted off at the final 4, but even then there was a non-elimination round causing Sierra to go home, but again, it was non-elimination round, so I don't really know how much to really knock him for that. And in comparison to Heather, who should have been voted out by like what, episode 9, she also explicitly says that it's going to be a jury vote. For then I question like, why vote off Duncan and Alejandro, two people you would have easily beaten at the end. And also she holds no real power in the game, and outside of getting rid of Alejandro, but that's mostly just because Alejandro just overplays his hand here. Still though, Alejandro gets my vote from a strategic lens, but from a character perspective, it's really easy. It's Heather. Great development throughout the season, funny moments, and this might be her best overall season because, like Gwen in Island, she's just really well rounded here. Moving on to Revenge of the Island, and honestly from a gameplay spot, I really don't know because the gameplay in Revenge is just really wonky, but I think Cameron was more strategically minded in the game, and despite being the catalyst for Mike getting out, I think he plays pretty decently. You could argue that it's impressive that Lightning makes it as far as he does due to the fact that he's a massive physical threat, but like a future season we will be talking about, when you really analyze why that is the case, you'll quickly drop that theory. Again, character-wise, I've stated this multiple times, but I do think Cameron is the only good male winner of the show, and it's not even close. Having a great underdog story, having a lot of fun moments, and just having really sweet dynamics with nearly all the characters minus, like, what, Stacy and Dawn? Again, Cameron gets my vote here in both categories. Now it's time to talk about AllStars, which from a gameplay perspective, I would have to vote Zoe. Again, Mike wasn't really active in playing the game, as that was all Mal, and if we include Mal, I just think it's not even close. Again, Mal just does a lot of self-sabotage to Mike's game, and to be honest, it doesn't even benefit Mal either, as he just wants to take control. So yeah, I honestly just don't know what to say about the Mike/Mal storyline from a gameplay front. Zoe, in my mind, unfortunately, is the best total drama player of all time, being an amazing spot throughout the entire game socially, and winning out of all the merge challenges, minus, like, what, 2? Again, character-wise, though, it's not even close for me either. Again, while Mike wasn't really active in the game, he was really active in the story. And while I can't say I enjoy the Mike/Mal storyline, as it is really weird, and also kind of corny, but, like, not in the next season type of corny, where I can at least find that funny, I just don't find the whole DID storyline to be a really good storyline this season, and it feels very awkward to talk about, especially with the whole reset button, which is extremely dark and also kind of icky. So yeah, sorry for not really wanting to talk about it too much. Zoe on the season, though, just really annoyed me of her being just so oblivious, and while it's not her fault, as the 13 episode season format just really sucks for a character like Zoe to have a great storyline on the season, she still didn't entertain me, so Mike gets my vote, just barely. Now talking about a final two that I think people will be upset with me for my result, in my opinion, and that is Shawn versus Sky. And from a character perspective, Sky would get my vote every single day of the year. Again, Sky's just not like Zoe, and I need people to get that out of the way, as Zoe would never act the way that Sky does, and Sky's also a lot more confrontational than most people remember. Again, I love how she puts Dave in his place, that's really funny from both characters. Also, the messiness of their relationship is just great TV to watch. Her rivalry with Sugar was great, and she's also Chris's daughter, which is a niche reference if you've been on the channel long enough. And she's also my longest running total drama crush, so that gives her bonus points as well. Combined with that with the fact that she's just really entertaining, she would get my vote by a mile. Shawn is definitely overrated in my opinion, as his whole zombie plotline really drags down, and that man needs therapy or something to tone down his schizophrenic self, but that's whatever. Again, I still like Shawn, and I think he is fun TV, and his relationship with Jasmine is cute, but I can't ignore his flaws because that's the forefront of his entire character. Like Revenge, though, gameplay-wise, it's really hard to decipher the two games. Again, Shawn would have been out if Chef didn't find him, and Sky would have been out if Dave didn't just fully crash out and quit the game, essentially. But the merge, we really just get challenges to decide who goes home, unless you're Max and Scarlet, who just get DQ'd from the game. So it's really hard to really tell who played the better game. But in my opinion, I do think Sky does better on most seasons than Shawn, who is most likely probably a pre-merge boot for just being really weird. And even if he gets to the merge, again, he's a terrible social player, so I doubt he would ever do well in any other season. So yeah, for Sky just being an overall better player, she would get my vote. Now talking about the Redonkulous race, and obviously the police cadets would win from a character perspective. Sanders is definitely my favorite from the two, and I know that is unpopular, but sometimes MacArthur just kind of drags on and on with her whole stick. She is still funny, but I prefer Sanders as the straight man. Her telling Stephanie that she needs help is probably one of those lines I will remember forever whenever I think about them from a character lens, because it is really funny. Again, Jeff and Brody are fine here. Again, I really wish we could have seen DJ instead of Brody, as I think Brody just brought off the dumb surfer energy to Jeff, and that's something that I just wasn't really a big fan of while watching the season. They definitely do have more depth than I remember, and there is a lot of episodes that really show off their great bromance, but again, it's not enough to beat the peak that was the police cadets. Now we're talking about the reboot seasons with Bowie versus Priya, and obviously I've said this multiple times in recent videos. Again, Priya wasn't a bad character by any means, but in comparison to Bowie, he just gets my vote in both categories, while also Priya just kind of plays a bad total drama game in this season. Again, losing out on the scary girl vote, her actively voting off Damien is a terrible decision, and her voting off Z is just also really bad. Mind you, I do think that she has a cleaner endgame than Bowie, but I think Bowie just plays a more impressive game throughout the season, so Bowie gets my vote from both lenses. Now for the final season, and probably my personal least favorite. We have the reboot season 2, which is not an option. Again, all these characters are really flawed. Wayne from the sense that he's not even relevant or funny. Caleb was great until the ping pong episode, where we see probably one of the biggest falls from grace from a character perspective. And then we have Julia, who is iconic as usual, and I do still love her, but again, she has way too much off-screen stuff to where she feels a bit too overpowered in my opinion. I guess Wayne would get my vote to win from a character lens because he's just less actively bad, but don't get me wrong, he is still the worst winner of the show by a mile, and he could have been written a lot better, but again, he's just wasted on the season, so yeah. But yeah, Wayne just barely beats out Julia, even though I think I would change my mind in a few months if I were to rewatch this season. But again, do I really want to rewatch the reboot season 2? Not really. I was shaking my head, but I realized you guys can't even see me, but yeah. Gameplay-wise, again, do I need to say anything? Wayne didn't play the game, and Caleb played actively terribly, while Julia was just as overpowered as Mal. So yeah, Julia would get my vote from a gameplay perspective. And there you have it, that's who I would vote for to win every season of Total Drama. Expect this for this Venture Camp as well once Carnival of Chaos wraps up. But until then, that is the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love you guys so much, and peace out.